and welcome to Power Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network where we reflect on Wildbow's most runaway work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we're coming at you live in the Discord. Hi, say hi, Discord.
Hi, Discord.
No, I meant the Discord people say hi, but it's not going to get onto the, they're doing it, but it's not obviously going to make it onto the audio. So thanks, everybody.
That's just for all of us here in the moment.
Yeah.
So I've got a note in here to talk about the costume contest, which I guess is just for this week going to be me telling everyone that it's over now.
Yep.
Submissions should be in, and we'll get the voting up very soon. So come be a patron if you want to get a vote in, because then the winner will get the prize money.
Hell yeah. So yeah, get ready to, if you're a patron or want to become a patron, get ready to see some great costumes and pick a winner.
Yeah, I haven't gone through all the entries yet, but like some of them have been popping up in the inbox, and they're very good.
Nice.
Pretty excited.
Good stuff.
There was one pale one in particular that's horrifying, and I can't wait to share it with everyone.
That's awesome. But yeah, today we're covering In Absentia 21.7 and 21.8.
Starting with 21.A. I just wanted to bring this up right this time. Is it weird to anyone else that this first one isn't an interlude? I was like, it feels like it's an interlude.
Yeah.
It's got it's got the Lucy segment at the end, so I get why it's like 21.7. But like I don't know, I was just like, yeah, I'm wondering if there's like if people have like latched. Is there a reason that I'm missing that it's definitely not an interlude, or was it just kind of a flip of the coin?
Just because we cut back to the Kenneteers a few times during it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you're right. It's a bit, whatever.
It makes for a fun surprise too. Like I definitely got value out of the fact that it was like I really wasn't expecting first the Beorgmann and then like the shifting POVs. So it definitely added to the surprise factor, which was fun.
Yeah. But yeah, so we start with the Beorgmann tending to his stolen children and his area, making sure nothing's out of place, nobody's able to talk to anybody else or escape.
Day-to-day housekeeping stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's very much like a small business kind of craftsman, carpenter kind of vibes, isn't he? Going around getting his reclaimed wood, building bespoke tree houses for his clientele. He's a chill carpenter. He's like Jesus, actually.
Yeah, I was about to make the same joke. He's just a humble carpenter. Your friendly neighborhood chippy. No, I love how instantly you do feel this just like insane amount of control and I don't know what word to use here. It's like, the amount of times he's done this, it's so practiced. The Beorgmann obviously came up in the context of the Alabaster's trial as like someone else who is like as old as she is, and that's always old with a capital O.
Yeah.
And this segment really makes you feel that very early on, like right here at the start. This is a guy who his pattern is like established as fuck, but also he can shift it. Like he's not old like Guillermet where he's a bit stuck. He's old and he knows how to play the game. He knows the ins and outs of everything around him.
Yeah. He's very aware of his area, isn't he?
Yeah.
And it is kind of horrifying. But he puts in a lot of effort into making sure that no kid can ever escape. And we hear the stories of the 2 or 3 times that somebody has in the past 100 years or so. Yeah, it's interesting. I thought the thing that I really liked that we learned about him here is he doesn't just keep them contained, but he also can be the devil in the deal with the devil if anyone is too close to escaping. And that's another way that he kind of spreads his influence is by forcing deals on people. Although, in the defense of humanity, most of the stories we hear about him offering these deals, the people say, nah, fuck you, man.
Yeah, like the parents in the car, that part was horrifying.
Yeah, but they don't sell out their or other kids, so, well done to them.
Although, I do got a shout out in the Beorgmann's defense. It said they had 5 kids in the back seat of that car, unless
Too
it's
many.
Honestly, it sounds like the kids might have gotten an upgrade in this scenario because that's a lot of kids.
Now they all have their own treehouse, except for the twins, I guess.
But yeah, to get back to your point, I actually you're talking about how he makes it difficult, or like impossible for them to escape, but it's not quite impossible. It's just very difficult. Like he's created, it's like what we used to hear with the Hungry Choir. it's a game that you
Yes.
technically can beat.
You have to be able to win the game,
Yeah.
and explicitly he makes sure that if he gets kind of challenged on that, he's got ways that he
Yeah.
can do it. But
Yeah, and
yeah,
so
I think it's
oh, sorry. Yeah, so he's setting up these kids and like creating waypoints, and so like, yeah, it's like, yeah, for him, he's farming them, farming these kids, and it's like he needs to be willing to lose some, like Billy the sissy,
mm,
in order to have the game. It's like good karma for him to lose that 1 in 1,000 kid, and even then, he's rigged it so much because Billy's the one you were talking about, where he cuts the deal with Billy after he's escaped to get him essentially to trick him into being forced to come back eventually.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll talk about how the he shifts that game once the assembly comes into power. But yeah, it's like he's just again, it's all coming back to me with this thing. Like he's so established and like practiced that it's like he's got this game where even the winners lose. Like it's but
mm,
technically ticks all the boxes for like the seal and the spirits not to come down on him.
yeah. It's a great example of how this world lends itself towards narrative. You know, like the Bjorgman has to make it into a compelling game a
Yeah.
slash escape narrative for the kids that have been taken. Like, yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, and all those stories of the victims, like it's this classic Wildbow thing where the Bjorgman is this background character. He's gotten a little bit of focus now here, but you could totally see the series of novels that is carried with the Bjorgman as the villain, and it's about the kids fighting the Bjorgman. Like
Mm,
the just the amount of like lore that's built into him as an individual monster. He could carry his own franchise. You've got like yeah, Ruth, the girl in the thing with the rabbits, which fuck, I thought we were going to watch the Bjorgman take her rabbits from her and kill her, and I was
mm,
fucking devastated. I'm
mm.
so glad Wildbow pulled back on and didn't do that, because after losing Percival last week, I wasn't sure he wouldn't cross that line.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't, yeah, and, like yeah, Billy the sissy, this little wizard kid who, like seems to fall in love with Billy. Like it's just this is a novel or two in and of
Well, yeah,
itself.
I can see a series of Bjorgman, horror films for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess like to touch on some of the old ways stuff as well. I did want to call out because we hate on the seal a lot. But there's this one moment where basically Billy realizes he's been tricked by the Beorgman and wants to renege on his deal to like give the his bullies kids to the Beorgman. And the Beorgman like goes to cash in on this deal, and the seal, like presumably the Legendaries do some Seal of Solomon based stuff to protect him. And the Bjorgman's a bit like, God, even though our deal was sworn in by the old ways, it kind of got overpowered by the seal. And I was just like, we should take this opportunity to just call out. Sometimes it's good to remember why the Seal of Solomon does exist. This is the use case for the Seal of Solomon.
Mm.
Like a rare win for the seal in Pale.
Yeah, I mean that's what's great about the Legendaries in general, right? Is that despite them being a little bit shitty as a practitioner family, they also are like the only example of how the old system did sometimes work.
Yeah, like yeah, they're the closest thing we've got to like the this is what practitioners were meant to do sort of thing. And it's like we talked about that a lot when they were the focus of the story, how like the system had been so abused that they were treated like shit for doing the job that practitioners were meant to do. But it is nice, I guess, now we're focusing in on the Bjorgman is exactly the kind of monster that the seal was created to deal with, and it's nice seeing that in action, even if it's not perfect.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is nice to see for sure. Um, Thumbs up for the Legendaries. But yeah, as he's tending to his garden, he notices the eyes of the new Alabaster turn to him, and he decides to hunker down.
Yeah, and this is like a really cool delivery on. It's a delivery and an extension of us like really getting reinforced how old he is in this chapter. Like
Mm,
the way he can see changes in pollen flows, and he like knows that means the Alabaster's looking at him. And he like follows the pollen around to see what she's up to. Like it's just that's so crazy. Like I love this idea that it's like he can read, he can intuit the meaning behind the brightness of the town nearby increasing by a fraction of a percent. Like he talks about it, he reckons he sees it even to the point where a lot of fairy might not be this good. Like
yeah, I
it's
mean
just so fun.
he's old with a capital O, right? Um, Yeah, which is a thing apparently, as we learn next
Mm,
chapter. So that's
yeah, and
fun.
yeah, I guess it's so fun seeing how that takes place in action. Like yeah, seeing him being able to adjust to what's happened, not because he gets hit like a shockwave like Nicolette's about to, but just because he senses like a change in the wind. Like he's so tied into nature in the worst way.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, I mean, this is a great piece of evidence for why replacing the Alabaster was such a good move. Clearly, the Alabaster was failing to do their job, right?
Yeah, like this is one of the it's like an immediate victory, and that's sort of the recurring theme in all these segments in this not an interlude is seeing little victories that are taking place because the alabaster is gone.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, this is like a very immediate and I would say it's a soft victory because like what I like about this is it's not like the story's not going and now with the alabaster gone, like everything is better again. Like the Beorgmann is still there; he's not dead.
Mm,
Um, in fact, he even seems pretty confident in his ability to beat whatever champion the assembly is going to send his way.
mm,
But just by this change in tone, he's had to switch from expansion to conservation mode. And it's like, that's a huge start. Like, he's gone from actively luring kids to protecting what he's got. Not perfect, but like, still more like, I'm still happy with it.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's progress.
Yeah, like it reminds me of what Lucy talked about with the mayor of Kennet, like an arc or so ago, where she was talking about how that consistency of the market or whatever, or the Christmas party, criminals kind of thrive over that. Like when the rules are that established and consistent, that allows criminals to thrive in breaking them, and it kind of feels like the Bjorgman was just doing that with the Alabaster.
Yeah.
Um, and this is like a testament to what Lucy was talking about there. It's like they changed the rules, and it means he can't be as confident anymore. Like it's
Yeah.
not even just about that the assembly is different. It's that sorry, it's not about that the assembly is targeting him as much as it is that she's just different.
Yeah, and not like something that can be relied on to be,
Yeah.
ineffectual, I
Yeah,
guess.
exactly. Like it definitely, yeah, we talked a lot about the alabaster being like this, like similar in a lot of ways to like changes to welfare and that sort of thing. And you can kind of see the Bjorgman as somebody who was abusing the system, and now that there's a new system in place, he's like freaking out and like, yeah, not gone, and like he's still got the victims he's got, but the fact that he's slowing down is just a great start.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Um, so yeah, we then jump forward to Nicolette, who falls over and is desperately trying to figure out why.
I love how extra this whole ritual thing that she's done is. Like, sometimes when a big change happens in a fantasy story and it sends like a shockwave across the world, I always feel like it's a little bit lame. But
Mm,
once again, the Otherverse takes a trope that I usually think is a bit silly and makes it work because, of course, Nicolette has done a ritual to make it so something like this happen. But it's just so funny that it's like she did a ritual to make herself more sensitive, so now she gets bowled over by a shockwave.
mm, yeah, it's very funny. The contretemps sensitivity ritual, which I mean, like we hear that there's like a feeling of the world skipping a beat on its heart or whatever. So that's like the normal way to interpret it, I guess. But also the fact that there's a ritual that you can do that maybe makes it so that you fall over if anything big happens is just very funny.
Yeah, well, because it's almost like it helps reinforce how monumental this is because Nicolette calls out that like she felt things like the Carmine take the seat and Kennet found being found and
Yeah.
stuff as like she did feel those, but she's like, man, they weren't this intense. So it's like it's almost like the Contratemps ritual is like it makes you sensitive to events, and it's not normal for something this big to happen.
Mm,
I also just wanted to call out, so yeah, contretemps, however you say it, is. I looked up the definition of that because I was curious where the word comes from, and I assume that in this context, it's talking about like an unexpected and unfortunate occurrence is the definition.
mm,
I just thought that was a funny word choice for Wilbo to pick because unexpected and unfortunate wasn't really our experience with what's just happened with the alabaster, but I suppose it does apply.
mm, yeah. Yeah. It's Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, over the course of these chapters, we get the vibe that actually this alabaster thing is such a big deal, like a way
Mm.
bigger deal than we expected, and a way bigger deal than anything else the Kenneteers have done, seemingly.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of fun, like yeah, like these chapters have a lot of fun playing with that throughout the both of them.
Hmm.
Um, Study with like I love the bit where Jen is like call Y and Nicolette's like, wait, you're telling me to call him, and she's like, now call Y, and I never get sick of that sort of like character interaction as an easy way to raise stakes is by having like a person who has a particular gripe being like, no, it doesn't matter right now, like we need to do this. Like that's one of the funnest things you can do with established characters. So having someone like Jen be like, "We need to call Y," is just such a fun way to be like, "Oh, this is serious."
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's a good escalation.
I just love it as a character. It's just so funny seeing someone like Jen be like, "Call Y." And speaking of fun character interactions, the Bittersweet Witch is here too, and she's
Yeah,
totally fucking nailed that Jen has a thing for Owen. That it's just so funny that Nicolette's like, I don't think that's a thing. They're cousins. Like we've been in Jen's head. We know that
yeah.
there was some unresolved shit
Something
happening
there.
there.
Yeah.
Like, and it's so funny to me that the Bittersweet Witch has just absolutely seen past that, and
Yeah.
also is not ashamed to just bring it up.
Yeah. Oh god, Bittersweet Witch is such a fun character. I love the vibe of the Bittersweet Witch, a pure force of chaos, just like being around with these kind of slightly trying too hard to be proper Belangers.
Mm. Well, I think what's funny is like why and the old guard Bellinger boys are kind of falling apart,
Mm.
and I feel like we're seeing the rise of the new primary Bellinger coven or circle, which is like the broken Bellinger girls. Like you've got like Nicolette, the Bitter Street Witch, Jillian, maybe even Jen if she behaves herself. It's now they're being replaced the little boys club is being replaced by all these women who've been through shit and have like come out of it like the better for it sort of thing. Like I don't know, I really hope Nicolette realizes her dream of like you remember she was trying to join that all girl coven when all the Bristow stuff was happening.
Mm.
Now it seems like she's just making her own with like a bunch of other girls who've just gone through bad shit and like I kind of love that vibe.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. Again, I think it plays very well off the BSW as well. It's just like fun
Yeah.
vibe stuff.
And so while we are talking about Jillian, sort of, so she was saying that her new kind of superpower that she seems to have gotten is she's really good at stargazing,
Mm.
which I just thought was pretty. I love that for the person who got like horrified and their eyes are all kind of horrified. Like stargazing does feel like the most big concept, spatial, temporal sort of augury practice that there would be. So of course that's the one she was sort of the most sensitive to now that her eyes can presumably see beyond regular space time or some shit.
Mm. Yeah, she definitely seems to be getting some weird powers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so Nico calls Y and they have a quick chat as Y needs help to figure out, what has actually happened. The Belanger compound used this as a chance to extract a bit of vengeance from Y for his shittiness during the attack.
Yeah, and I do love that. Like this is the like, Nicolette and Jen are kind of fully on a team about this, where it's like, no, we need to undo this shitty balance that existed, where the little main part of the circle has all the toys, and everyone else is just sitting in this I don't know this compound out in the middle of nowhere, lusting for their cousins. Like it wasn't a healthy fucking situation, and they're fully on the same page about trying to get Y to ease up on it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting the dynamics between like Y and Jen and the power play that Jen is making seeming to be working out pretty well. Yeah, it's strange. Is it a good thing that Jen is taking over the Belanger camp? Hard to
Yeah,
say.
so Nicolette does seem to imply that the current thinking is that Jen will probably win the vote that's going to
Yes,
happen
which
within the
definitely
next couple
wasn't
of
the
days.
case before the
No.
attack on the compound, right?
And then Nicolette's internally seems to be thinking that then after that it will be a competition between her and Y, which does sound very fun.
Mm.
Um, Yeah, I had the same thought as you. I was like, I guess Jen is a step up from the old way they were doing things, but like she's just so consistently had this massive chip on her shoulder. I hope that that is being eroded as she's getting power, and she's not going to turn into like the worst kind of micromanager sort of person.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Has the experience of the raid and what happened to Jilly like changed her for the better? maybe you can kind of see some hints of that.
Yes.
So
I think Nicolette and the Bitter Street Witch have a conversation about this. It's like she seems better so far,
yeah,
and the Bitter Street Witch says we can reinforce that by making her fuck Owen, which I'm not fully sold on, but yeah, I
that
don't know.
is
It
a
is,
funny idea. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and again, this is I think like the Alabaster dying has opened up this window for them to even this gap a bit more and like get Wyatt to give them toys. So it's kind of it is all healing, and you just can't help but think that this all started because Charles's group raided their compound, and so he's promoting good change.
Mm, yeah, yeah. So thumbs up.
Another win, another win for Team Charles.
Well done, Charles. Speaking of Charles, we get a scene of Charles and Marcy debriefing on what's going on, and watching Charles find this out is very funny.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like Marissa is also clearly just having the time of her
Having an
life.
absolute blast with it. Yeah.
And it's one of those things where like yeah, as a like fairy have kind of been set up in the universe as like the people who are treating everyone like their stories. So it's one of those moments where you kind of aligned with the fairy-ish person on screen, because I was also just completely on Marissa's page.
Mm.
But it does make me wonder why why Charles would like it must be so frustrating to work with her. Like the first thing that happens in his segment is he asks her like, oh, so he says to her, if you're not telling me right away, it's either not critical or it's not something I can easily act on. And Mariska responds with, correct. Which is like, God, I don't know how people work with Fairy and don't punch them in the face. It's just
Yeah.
she's so frustrating.
Yeah, good times. But yeah, so Charles kind of reaches for the power of that he should have and finds that there's not enough there, and is like, well, it's not the Orem, it's not the Sable, and it's this great moment. Yeah, and again, like, uh, we knew this was a good move, but Charles and Marcy seem to indicate this is again much bigger than expected. Like,
Mm.
Charles says it's not checkmate, but it is check and definitive move. And like the thing that they say that really brought this home to me was that the practitioner escape clause might not be valid anymore.
Yeah.
Probably would be, but like that's the amount of power that he's lost, that he can't do some of this. He maybe can't keep some of his promises there. Like that's crazy. That's big.
Yeah, I don't think I'd really appreciated how big the Alabaster's power reserves were.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like this is sort of the thing where the Kenneteers, I don't think they did either. Like I don't think they really appreciated how good the Alabaster was as their initial target. Like
Yeah.
it seems at this stage that if you had to pick one to really fuck with Charles as the opening salvo, this was the right call.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean we'll talk about the plans for the Aurum, I guess, in a bit, but like I guess I just wanted like you just mentioned the whole chess metaphor because Charles brings chess up, and then a little bit after that, Rook gets a mention too. It, Rook, man, what is up with Rook?
Well, yeah,
Like
we get. Is it this chapter or next chapter where we get the comment that Rook is hanging out with the
it's
Saint
this one.
Victor's?
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So what?
I mean, again, part of me is holding on to this hope that Rook is tricking us just like she did in Arc 9 and 10, and that actually, she's just playing both sides, so she always comes out on top or something. But it's just like Rook just continues to be more and more Team Charles, and it's just
Yeah. It's very interesting. I think if Rook is playing both sides, the point at which the Kenneteers start coming out on top will be the point that Rook switches back and is like, surprise, I was helping you the whole time. So I'm happy for that to come. Yeah.
I mean, like you can't rule that out as a possibility. But I feel like it's going to be more like just I think I like as in Rook is playboy, so it won't be surprised I was helping you along. It'll be like more like, well, now it is more tactical for me to help you, which is not ideal, but I suppose I take it. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, like this is ever since she tricked us by turning out to be Mrs. BFF. Like you can't rule out some kind of big long con. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to really land on it one way or the other, isn't it?
Yeah. So I guess the other thing I wanted to call out, we also have a moment where Liz runs in, and Liz is all like, oh god, it's a regional big city spirit, and what if they come after me? And Charles calms her down by basically saying, oh, you don't rate as a threat. They don't give a shit about you. And she takes that surprisingly well, which was like, I guess that reminder that it's like Liz, as much as she needs to be included and be in the center of things, she also does she likes to blend in. Like she doesn't want to stand out in the crowd. She's this interesting person in that she wants to be in the middle of things and have a finger in all the pies, but also not be the figurehead. She wants to be the person behind the camera,
Mm,
pulling strings off stage.
mm, yeah. Yeah. Liz is interesting, huh? She does just feel kind of like a bit of a pawn in some of this stuff.
Yeah,
But she wants to not be she wants to be Mariska.
but also she doesn't, because I don't think she wants to be like the goddess that everyone worships. She wants to be the person who is in a league with the goddess that everyone worships.
Mm,
Like the thing that freaks her out here is the idea that they might target her specifically.
mm,
I like, yeah, she wants to be the center of the crowd, not the figurehead. Yeah, it's interesting. Like
yeah.
Walbo's just typed in chat the wallflowers paradox, and that yeah, that
Yeah.
like that sounds like a good term for it. But I guess the other thing I wanted to talk about in the context of Liz is you know, we've long talked about the whole like Charles is Lucy gone bad, Mariska is Verona gone bad, and Edith was Avery gone bad in the past. And now I'm sort of realizing that I think like probably quite a while ago, it probably stopped making sense to keep comparing Edith and Avery, and I actually think I want to sort of move the title of the evil Avery over to Liz's head. Because Avery, you know, I think long ago kind of moved well beyond her parallels to Edith in like unhealthy relationships, and Avery is now that person who is, you know, the connections for the wider region or and whatever. And I think like Liz is this great unhealthy version of Avery's running around and networking. Like Liz is the bad kind of networking. And she's also the third that came into the friendship late.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, like as the person who is like Liz is the one who's most directly interacting with the Negeteers and like Kennet as a whole. Like she is kind of their person who's most directly working with all of their allies. She is kind of the conspirators Avery, as Avery has shifted
mm,
roles away from being the Edith to the Liz.
yeah.
So especially now that Edith is maybe some level of dead, I like I feel like I want to almost just start treating Liz as the third conspirator, replacing Edith as the evil Avery.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder if we've moved beyond the parallels of the
Oh,
Kenneteers and
we absolutely
conspirators
have.
now.
Yeah, like
Yeah, like a,
it,
yeah.
the Charles Verona stuff has clearly moved Charles away from just being angry like Lucy was at the start of the story to like wait, there's absolutely it's never just been like one to one. Walbo doesn't let us have it that easy. But I still think of them, I guess, as primarily being associated in that way, and this is
Mm,
move. I'm moving like my primary Avery association to Liz over Edith, I guess.
mm, yeah, yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, yeah, we
Yeah.
also start to see more and more of Marcy's army.
Yeah, which is Charles calls them Marissicas people, which I think
Yeah.
is interesting. Like we talked about Marcy just a bit before, and I was still commenting on how she was acting like a fairy when Charles was working with her. This is the interesting. Like, I really want to see inside Marcy's head. Like, I want to what is going on with Marcy right now, because her whole thing was to not be a fairy, and you know she can seemingly turn off the scheming part, but like we're seeing when she interacts with Charles, like her personality is still very much Mariska, and I wonder like what not being a fairy means to her, because she's still like an obnoxious piece of shit, so she's still kind of a fairy. Like yeah, I wonder what this all means to her. How like because it would seem to me that you know trying to change your classification as an other
Mm,
is trying to change like what personality bucket you get put in as well. But she's still very much herself. So
mm,
what is the fairy that she's shedding when she still very much seems to enjoy being this personality of the yet the person who doesn't answer questions and is kind of just a pain in the ass to work with. Yeah,
yeah. Uh, she's yeah, it's interesting the dynamic between Charles and Marcy, isn't it? I feel like we
yeah.
still haven't got a firm answer on exactly what Marcy's deal is. I don't know if we will ever get that answer.
Yeah, yeah, true. I think we said this last week too, but again, if she's building also like they talk about how she has her like abyssal creatures or something. I
Mm,
hope she has cool mythological creatures, because that's like if you're gonna not be a fairy and you're gonna be a god or whatever, give me cool creatures. I want to see fucking giant sexy leeches or something. I don't know.
Mm,
But yeah, like I guess the other thing with Marcy is like you're right. Like we don't quite know what her end game motivations are.
mm,
And I was actually thinking earlier this week. I talked to you a bit about this on Facebook, but like it does seem like Marcy's big thing in Arc 13 was how she turned the Kenneteers kind of so that they weren't on the same page. And God, it just really feels like the culprits are open to that kind of manipulation as well. Like
mm,
it feels like you should be able to get Charles and Mariska at each other's throats fairly easily. Like Charles makes note of how these soldiers are Mariska's people, whereas we see the Alabaster Assembly refers to them as Charles. Like the
mm,
culprits have not really ever been on the same page. They've just been working together because it's been good, and they've extracted these oaths out of each other. But it feels like you should be like once you start to take Charles's power away from him, you should be able to create a series of events where Charles and Mariska are not moving in the same direction, and you can get them at each other's throats.
mm.
And I just think it would be funny for the Kenneteers to return the favor in that way.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's interesting. Um, so yeah, we jump back to the trio to check in on them, and we see the ex-Alabaster's loyalists going off to kill themselves, or at least some of them,
Yeah.
which is pretty grim. But the Alabaster Assembly is nice enough to not let them do it right in front of Lucy, at least.
Yeah, I know it's morbid, but I was getting a chuckle out of this thing where the Alabaster like literally stopped her
Mm,
and was just like, no, if you do this, you have to go do it somewhere where go do it in a ditch where it won't matter.
mm,
Like there's
yeah.
something so satisfying about just because I know these people are suicidal and they obviously need help. Like this therapist lady needs a therapist.
Mm,
Um, but also I don't know when people are trying to weaponize suicide like that. Part of me couldn't help but like celebrate when they're getting shut down.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know, very very emotionally confusing reacting to this segment.
Yeah. It's yeah, it's kind of nice to be like for the Alabaster Assembly to basically be like, "Yep, you can still do it. I'm not going to stop you, but also I'm going to make sure it doesn't mean anything. So fuck
Yeah,
you."
yeah, because like fuck weaponizing suicide like that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
It's so exactly against what the Alabaster stands for. So it's so perfect.
yeah, or what the Alabaster now stands for, should stand for. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, oh yeah,
Well,
to kind of elaborate on that point, Verona basically says that in universe saying that they're idiots for pissing on what she gave them in way of a second chance, throwing it away to make a point, not even
yeah.
really make a point, and insulting the therapist lady and saying she was a shitty therapist, which is
Yeah.
great.
Oh yeah, and yeah, needs therapy. I mean, yeah. I also really like that the Alabaster Assembly gathers the Kenneteers and is like, "Hey, just a heads up, like we're not allies. Like, I don't owe you any favors." Is essentially what she's saying. And they do like, she is of course happy to agree to enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of shit against Charles, which is good. But I thought it was really important that the first thing the assembly felt the need to address is like she's not their pawn or anything, which is
Mm,
what separates this side from Charles, right? Because all of his lords are like sworn to certain oaths and shit. Like it's one of those important distinctions that separates Team Kennet and Team Charles. That Kennet put this person in here, and the first thing she says is like, "I'm not going to take your side just because you put me here."
yeah, which I think is right because if the Alabaster was siding with the Kenneteers, it would be basically the exact same as what
Yeah,
was happening previously. So,
and
kind
it
of
would
makes them less impeachable.
it would hollow their victory because it would turn it into a play in their fight against Charles, not a genuine attempt to fix the Alabaster's shittiness.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Um, so yeah, Charles shows up to let them know the kid gloves are really, really, truly off this time. I mean it, double dog
Yeah,
swear.
I'm
Um,
glad you say that because I'm glad I'm not the only one who kind of got the vibe. I'm like, Charles, I know that you're saying that, and I know you probably mean it, but like,
he said it
you know,
about 6 times.
yeah, and like we talk to Jasmine and Connor in the next chapter, and they're both more or less fine. Like Charles isn't going after them directly, and it's just like, come on, Charles, you've done worse. Like if the gloves were really off, you would be targeting their families.
Yeah, I think it's pretty funny. Like the vibe of Charles has come here to say, "This time I mean it. You're in trouble, guys." But also, he has this weird energy of being like,
he likes them
impressed with
so
them,
much.
kind of. Well, like
Yeah.
like when they're talking about Percival, and he says, "I regret that in all my time as a summoner, I didn't get to inflict something quite like that on the people I hated most." Praise, like that's
Yeah.
pure praise. It's great. God, Charles is so fun.
No, him and Verona are like trading little in jokes with each other and smiling at each other. It's just like, Charles, just stop being a dickhead for 5 minutes. You're so close to being a cool dude. And like, yeah, like this, yeah, like he totally rates the Kenneteers and doesn't want to be fighting them, and he can't. Yeah, he's so close, like so close to being someone we could support.
Mm,
It's just so funny. And yeah, like on like part of me still holds out hope that yeah, like that will be some of the final stuff we see from him, is him like finally like when he's beaten, yeah, I don't know, like sort of turning coat, but that feels too easy. So I don't know.
mm,
I just
yeah,
think like yeah, Charles has consistently been the person who he keeps teaming up with the wrong people and making the wrong decisions, and I'd love for like his ending to be him having to be a good Carmine under like because he's surrounded by better people and like trying to atone for his mistakes. It does feel like what he deserves.
yeah,
But yeah, but also it's part of that's like God, it feels a little bit clean and easy. So we'll see.
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, no, like his whole vibe in response to losing the Alabaster like this is yeah, like you're right. He seems to think it's kind of funny that they did this. He's sort of like, man, this really affects my plans and this isn't good, but like, well played.
Mm.
Like he's just excited to have friends playing a game with him. It's almost he's so fucking lonely.
Yeah, I mean, his best friends are Liz and Marissa, so
Like
what
he
do you
would be.
expect? Yeah.
Well, no, I think his best friend is Verona. Honestly,
Well,
like
yes, true.
talking about laying off the Lucy comparisons for him or whatever. But yeah, his best friend is Verona, and they're not even particularly close.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's so he's just so sad while also terrifying.
Yeah. A little bit of a fun lore drop here as well. When they're heading off through the paths, Guillermet says, "I've been back before they were called something else." He says, "Before they were dreams, they found the right answer early and then convinced themselves they were wrong," which is
Yeah.
just a classic Wabo toying with us kind of move.
Well, I think one of the things that came up during all the Pisces stuff was that Wildbow said a lot of people got the Pisces answer early and then talked themselves out of it. So
Mm.
if I would just call this a direct fuck you to the audience in a fun way.
Yeah.
I had a good chuckle at this line from Guillermet. Like it did feel like Wildbow kind of taunting us as an audience, and I love that.
Mm.
I want to call out mostly Verona and Avery, but all three Kenneteers are culpable. Not one of them follows up this statement from Guillermet with the question, what were they called?
Yeah.
And I got to say, like, yeah, particularly Verona, because she's the one who's always interested in this stuff, and Avery, because she's the path nut. I'm extremely disappointed in them. And, we're starting to plan All Packed Up 2 things again. One of the things we're looking at is like a segment where we update our practitioner tier list. And I got to say, this is some real B tier energy from the both of them. Like, they need to shape it up. Like, this is unacceptable, not asking Guillermet what the name was.
Mm. Yeah. It's shame on them all.
Yeah. Like, this is going to cost them when the time comes to reevaluate what tier they're in.
So yeah, they arrive at their new sanctuary, Zed and Bree's house, and start to plan their next kill on the Aurum.
Yeah, and I just wanted to call out how much I enjoyed learning that like Zed is really fucking enjoying working on the black box. Like I think when Ray first thought about giving it to him in Arc 13, it was like, yeah, that does feel like a good fit. It seems like Zed is really thriving on it, so that's just nice.
Mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so nice to be back with these two. Like they're having a good time. They're just living their best life. But yeah, I mean the first thing, maybe not the very first thing, but one of the first things that Zed says is like, "Oh, holy fuck" or something,
Yeah.
right? Isn't it?
Well,
Yeah.
because remember in Arc 13, when he was in Kennet, Zed very much functioned as the guy who was just going, this shit is fucking crazy, y'all.
Yeah.
Like I'd almost forgotten that was his role for about an arc, so it was really funny coming back here and just seeing him slide back into it. Where he's like, "Hey guys, can we just take a second to like the fuck?" Like like, he's gone from the guy who was like, "Hey, most practitioners will only maybe meet the judges once at the climax of their story."
Mm.
And it's like, and now they're here, like if a couple of months later, and it's like, yeah, we killed her. She just wasn't good enough. I enjoy, like, Zed is such a great way to channel the like holy fuck energy that the Kenneteers deserve.
Yeah.
I also think, oh, it's just set up like, it's so funny it must be funny to be someone like Zed, where it's like these three Kenneteers are very quickly rising through the ranks of like global recognition. Like you get the vibe that people all over the world are now going to know these three names, especially Avery. And
Mm,
it's like Zed's going to be able to talk about the time the three of them crashed on his pull-out couch. Like that's just funny. Like, that's just going to be a great story. Like, just the time that the three fucking top practitioners in the world needed a place to crash, so they all shared my bed.
yeah. Yeah. It's just they've just got such a nice vibe in their home, haven't they?
Yeah, and yeah, we'll get to talk about that even more in the next chapter. But Zed and Brie are just such sweethearts. They're so nice.
Mm,
And yeah, I guess this is sort of the end of 21.7. I just really I really love this format of a sort of interlude, not really, for really helping us understand the gravity of the Alabaster's death. Like 21.8 does some stuff in a minute that we're going to talk about to help reinforce it, but I think it was really cool to like cycle through a series of POVs to really show us how this is impacting
mm,
everything, because this has gone like, it culminates sort of in us seeing how it affects things with the Kenneteers and Charles and Marcy and their sort of war. But that wasn't really the point. The first thing we see is how this is affecting things like the Beorgmann and how it's affecting the Bellinger rebuild and stuff. Like this was a big move. It's had significant impacts, and I think cycling through a bunch of places to really help us feel that was a really cool idea.
yeah. Yeah. It was a great uh non-interlude.
Yeah. It's still it's an interlude in my head, which is it's funny. Like I'm always going to think of it as the Beorgmann and Nicolette chapter, and I almost forget Lucy was there at the end of it.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, the next chapter is in Absentia 21.8, which is fully from Lucy's perspective. None of this half Lucy stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so it begins with Lucy waking up before everybody else and kind of trying her best to make herself feel normal, semi
Yeah.
unsuccessfully.
And again, like now that it's an actual Lucy chapter, it does that thing that all of the other sort of normal chapters in this arc have done, which is really taking a moment right at the start to remind us that the Kenneteers are not home and that eats away at you. Like they're that sense of a lack of home and being on the move and not having your stuff, not being settled, is just getting to all three of them. And that just makes sense for the practitioners of Kennet to be feeling uncomfortable with the fact that they can't go to Kennet.
Yeah, yeah, um,
Sorry,
yeah.
the old practitioners of Kennet, my bad.
Yeah, true. The ex Kenneteers.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you're right. It's a classic, and it's again sets the tone for Lucy feeling not quite at home in her skin for the rest of this chapter. Um,
Hmm.
we do get this adorable fixing up the sleeping arrangements scene though, which is just like one because it's so adorable how Verona and Avery act, but also Lucy being their like scheming caretaker and like using her battle knowledge to inflict, coziness on them is so good.
The stuff she does with Snowdrop is so funny because I that wouldn't have been my first thought, but when you see it, it's beautiful in action. Like adjusting Snowdrop so that Avery adjusts herself is just fucking genius.
Mm,
Yeah, you're right. This whole it's just so cute and like yeah, I like we've talked a lot, and everyone in the fandom has about the way the Kenneteers are slowly fading into each other's banners again, and this is just one of those scenes that's like, oh, like this is why that's happening now. Like this is just the three of them just able to work together as a unit and support each other.
yeah, yeah. Um,
But I'm
that
curious, actually. So this should have been our discussion question.
Oh yeah.
Like, are you a Verona, a Lucy, or an Avery sleeper? Because like I'm 100% an Avery. I'm fucking spread out in like starfish position, fucking taking up the whole bed all the
Wait,
time.
is a Lucy sleeper just someone who wakes up really early and
Yeah,
can't get back
insomnia.
to sleep?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I'm a Verona sleeper. I kind of curl up with the blankets vibe.
I I used to try doing the thing. Verona does that thing where she puts like the blanket over her face.
Yeah, wait, wait,
I,
wait. Sorry. before we started recording, we were talking, Elliot, about how you woke up to read the chapter at 3 a.m. this morning.
That's
So I think
true.
you are a Lucy, actually.
Yeah, that's fair. But okay, no, here's what I'm going to
Well
say.
played
I'm
to Tommy
overall
B, who pointed that out
because
in the Discord. Yeah.
because Avery is also like normally the morning person, and I think my bout of recent insomnia aside, I'm also like I got home a little bit early yesterday because I managed to convince the rest of my work colleagues that we should leave, like we should start our day at 6 a.m.
Mm.
And I feel like that was Avery's energy at the start of the story because she was like, in her case, it was because she was the sports person, but I don't know. I guess I was more just thinking in terms of like their positions, like because Verona does that thing. I used to try to do this as a kid to get the sunlight to go away. I try and put the blanket over my head, but then I just felt like I was suffocating,
Mm.
and I don't know how because I've seen people like my best friend in primary school did the same maneuver as Verona, and I don't understand how they didn't suffocate.
Yeah, I don't know. Just practice.
What do you mean? You can't practice not breathing? I
Yeah,
suppose
of
you
course you
can.
can. Yeah, haven't you seen that thing about how David Blaine learned to hold his breath for 6 years underwater or whatever?
Wait, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah, Google it. Yeah,
Okay,
Google it.
6 years.
Yeah. He hasn't breathed once to this day.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, Zed wakes up and Zed and Luce start having a chat about the next Machina which attacked them at Garrick HQ, Tenant 2603.
Yeah, and Zed really reminds me of the teenage hacker bros. Like the guy's rocking like 2 hours, slightly less than 2 hours of sleep, but he's up here fucking already getting started on the next thing. Like that sort of unhealthy sleep habit shit you can get away with when you're a teenager like Zed.
Mm.
Um, I don't know. It was just funny. I was like, God, I wish I could still do stuff like that. Whereas when I pull an all nighter now at my age, like it stays with me for like 3 days.
Yeah. 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 It's fun that Zed gets nourished so much by the work that he does. It's
Yeah,
good times.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so again, the fact that Zed knows who Tenant 2603 is from Lucy's description clearly indicates, okay, this is such a strong thing. And we obviously, like, clearly it seemed strong when it attacked the Garrett compound and fucking
Yeah.
basically, wrote it off for them. But yeah, again, it's just like, man, the Kenneteers are about to do some more crazy shit where they just take out another well-known problem that no one else has been able to deal with.
Yeah, like I get that technomancy is like new and like not as established and all that, but like there's still the fact that like very quickly Zed can just name drop exactly who this was based on a brief description. Tells
Yeah.
you that it's a top tier technomancy other, and he says as much when he's like Freeman would have needed to book this shit out. Like so, yeah, like you're right. It is just like the Kenneteers. Just what you should be afraid when the Kenneteers come knocking at your door. Actually, if you're someone like Zed, because it's like they're gonna rope you into some fucking high tier bullshit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, I guess it's not the Kenneteers that rope them into the bullshit here. It is Bree's idea, I
well,
guess.
no, they were already talking about how to deal with it. Bree
True,
just
true.
pitched a suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also I did think it was interesting how we learned that this tenant guy was able to build up so much power just because the existing systems weren't really watching tech, and that allowed
Mm,
him to grow. And because I guess like this had already jumped out to me before the comparisons to the Aurum get explicitly brought up by Zed later, but like that felt like important when we're starting to talk about the Aurum, that like one way for others to just seemingly get a whole bunch of powers deal with shit that other people aren't really on top of yet. Like I don't know, like because the plan. I guess we'll touch on the plan to deal with the Aurum later, but like that this feels relevant to that because clearly their current plan isn't really a goer at the moment.
mm.
But yeah, and it does remind me of like the ways people talk about like you remember when hacking in the 90s and 2000s, like something like a middle class person could just buy a bunch of servers and become like a world power online because
Yeah.
like nowadays hacking is kind of nationalized
Mm,
and you need to be an established power, and that does remind me of how technomancy is working in the other verse. Like you used to have one other who just got in on it early and got a fuckload of power just because they were there.
mm.
Whereas now there are technomancers on councils and stuff.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting. I mean, I look forward to seeing what a more established technomancy looks like.
Yeah.
I think technomancy is a great lens to explore modern world problems through, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
um, a lot of the issues that we are having as a world, capitalist issues can have really fun technomancy parallels. So I think it would be a good protag or setting for a Wildbow story.
Yeah, it did briefly cross my mind with the Aurum. I was thinking, could you challenge the Aurum the same way they did the Alabaster? And part of me was like, well, yeah, income equality is getting worse. Like to
Mm.
make that the Aurum's fault, but then fucking there's probably people like Muscle who don't see that as a problem, so it wouldn't quite work the same.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, good point.
yeah, like I don't know if you saw the news that came out of Ontario this week. Actually, like there's like a big strike going there,
Mm.
and the the Ontarian government sided with the company, and basically they're like they want to fine the workers who are striking
Oh my
for every day they
god!
strike.
Yikes!
Um, and I believe the word for that is yeah, there's like a word for when you have to work whether you want to or not, and I can't remember what it is.
Uh,
Um,
Forced servitude.
yeah. Oh, yeah. That's it. Servitude. Yeah. So anyway, that just like jumped out to me this week. I was hearing about like all this dumb shit going on in Ontario, and it's like, hey, that's like the book.
Yeah.
Um,
Yikes!
but yeah. No,
Yikes!
there is also just a bunch of like fun lore, like to step aside from the yike stuff. A lot of lore dumped here that we isn't really podcast sort of stuff to talk about, but I did enjoy it. Like Nex Machina for the names for the or Deus Nex Machina, very fun
It's
little
very
name.
silly. Yeah.
Great pun. Yeah, like yeah, I don't know, like I enjoy all these sorts of technomancy lore dumps from people like Zed, and
Mm.
doesn't Lucy has to do that thing, and this always happens with Zed, where Lucy has to be like, "Look, loving this is interesting, but is it relevant?" It's just like it's like Zed's signature move at this point is to just start getting carried away and just dump too much info on you.
Mm. Yeah. Um, yeah. So, yeah. Then, as they're chatting, they're interrupted by a phone call from Paris. Is that a person? Is that a spirit? Is that a lord? Nobody knows.
Zed said it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
He uses the term practitioner for them later. He
Yes.
says this
Yes.
is the most well-connected practitioner you'll probably ever talk to, which jumped out to me because I was like, Zed, have you met these three? Like, give them a week, and they'll find a way to
Yeah,
talk
I
about
know, right? I mean, like Avery's chatted to the Page of Suns. I mean,
it. Yeah.
obviously not a practitioner, but still.
Well, I have to assume London is bigger than Paris, and I don't know that much about geopolitics, so I'd be happy for somebody to prove why I could be wrong on that. But like, it always gave me the vibe that like Zed was trying to sell it, but it's like Paris is the biggest thing you talk to, and so give him a week in London, will be calling them, and that's probably bigger. Um, yeah, I did. I really related to that moment where like Lucy's being handed the phone and she's like really processing how monumental this is, and the like little intrusive thought that crosses through her mind is, imagine if I hit the end call button by accident.
Yeah,
I
how
just really
funny would
like
it
that.
be? Do it, Lucy.
Yeah, like just
Yeah.
that's absolutely like that's What are those intrusive thoughts like when you're having like a moment of silence for fallen soldiers or something, and it's just like, wouldn't it be funny if I just like yelled out a swear word or something?
Mm,
Um, I love seeing that on paper.
yeah. It's funny stuff. But yeah, I mean, again, practitioners are being a big deal. Avery makes a point later that it's weird, such annoying that this has drawn so much attention when all of what Charles is doing seemingly hasn't, which, yeah, I feel you, Avery.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we don't know that there weren't similar calls going around at that time, but it's like, there's almost like an implicit threat from Paris here about like, they need to make sure they're not doing too much, or people will
Yeah.
start coming for them.
Yeah.
And it is very much like, that's kind of bullshit. Like, because surely what Charles is doing is worse, but it does remind me of the way international politics can get like treated. Like this felt very true to international politics, where it's like, oh, there's like civil unrest or some sort of civil war going on in Ontario. Like, we'll keep an eye on it, but that doesn't really affect us here in Paris.
Mm,
Oh wait, they killed like the Alabaster, the sort of signal of, like the embodiment of the establishment in the region, and
mm,
like stability and stuff. And it's like, oh, things might actually be destabilized in a way that affects us. Like, we better keep a closer eye on this. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's the fact that Paris says you're aware she was old with a capital O is very interesting to me. Like,
yeah,
yeah, it signifies importance pretty heavily.
yeah. And obviously, like if we sort of travel back in time to the like post World War II, the '60s and stuff, it was like people don't give a shit whether yeah, like the West won't give a shit when there's a civil war in some minor country or whatever, but like communism starts raising up and suddenly there's wars in multiple countries to stop communism, and it kind of felt the same here. Like the issue isn't so much that there's violence happening in Ontario, it's that by being able to take out shit like the Alabasters, the Kenneteers now represent a threat to the status quo.
Mm.
In a way where I guess it's expected that Charles will just sort of burn out, or he's being very open and it's like, yeah, whatever, like he's fine. Whereas like the Kenneteers taking out the Alabaster is a bit like, oh no, these kids are trying to do something in a way that matters, and that's like almost more intimidating to something like Paris.
Yeah, yeah, it's they're willing to challenge status quos. Watch out.
And I also wanted to call out, because it was really funny to me that this was Paris calling and not London, because London and Paris get name dropped right beside each other in the previous chapter.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things where it was like Paris was like, I need to be kept aware, or I think it's Zed who was like explaining, they need to be aware of everything that's sort of happening. Part of me was like, if this story was set in Australia, I can't imagine that Paris would have been chosen by Wildbow, because like, fuck it, I don't think of Paris at all. But I guess like Canada has a big like there's like French Canada and shit, so
yeah.
It does make, but it's just like it would have to be London fitting this role if it was like Australia. Like we don't have that French or any other connection. So that it just stood out to me that like as an Australian, usually so much of what's going on with the Canadian politics side of it aligns to Australia, and this is one of the instances where I was like, Paris? Like, oh, I guess.
So if it was if we killed the Alabaster in Australia, who would call?
I think it'd have to be London. Like, I can't
true.
see.
I guess we have our monarchist ties, don't we?
Yeah, and Canada does too. Canada just also has the French ties as well.
Yes.
Whereas I don't think we have any kind of secondary tie like that.
Yeah.
Like Mythos is suggesting Auckland in the chat, but that's sort of like the little fish
they're
calling
smaller,
the big fish.
Come on.
in this analogy, they're the little goblin. Yeah.
We'd be calling Auckland if they killed their Alabaster.
If it was and because like New Zealand is Australia's Canada. Like,
yes, for sure.
If we're the US, then New Zealand is our Canada.
New Zealand is Australia's Canada for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think any Kiwis would be unhappy with that comparison.
No, because what we're saying is that there's more snow, the people are nicer. That's where the comparison comes from.
It's kind of fighting against the scourge of cultural decay better.
They have better politicians. Yeah. It really adds up.
Yep. Anyway, so the gang have some breakfast and plan for how they can call home. Bree suggests that she eats the Tenant, which is a great time.
Yeah, and again, a lot more technomancy lore dumping here. Loved it. Don't really have anything to comment on it for the podcast at least, but yeah.
My favorite bit was I can't remember who it was. I think Verona says, "Oh, do you have a technomancy waffle maker?" And Zed kind of laughs, and then 3 paragraphs later makes them magic technomancy waffles, which is, I mean, it's not, no, you fool. It's not the waffle maker that's magic. It's the outlet that I plug it into, but still,
I had the same reaction where it was like, he kind of laughs it off and then does pull out a big gizmo that they use. And it was like, wait, Zed, what are you doing?
Very funny.
It reminded me, so if I'm understanding it right, it was like this copying device where you plug 3 things into it and it kind of steals properties from each of them. It reminded me of, maybe this is a reference nobody else is going to understand, but the Alchemy, like Rick and Morty VR game has a machine and you can stick any 2 objects in the entire game into it, assuming they fit. And it will combine random properties from them and spit out like a new game object that's like, the shape from one and the physical textures from another, or it lets you fully break the game. It's really fun. But like this reminded me of that.
Yeah.
Great game. If people are into VR games, or the Alchemy. So it's the Rick and Morty game. But it's made by Alchemy, who are the same ones that made like Job Simulator and Vacation Simulator, and they make top tier VR. And this was like their one, like they teamed up to make the Rick and Morty
Virtual Reality.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Interesting.
Gets a bit like, you're pretty sick of the Justin Roiland like, wacky random Rick and Morty humor by the end of it, but like mechanically, that's where Alchemy exceeds in VR games, and that's what carries the game for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, yeah, Bree, total badass, has this weird gift to eat monsters, and damn sure he's going to use it. they're so delightful, these two.
It's funny because I was the same as Zed, where I had no idea what Bree was getting at when she comes over and slowly suggests to him that they use her.
Mm.
But also part of me was like, I don't know, I'm kind of on Zed. Like, I'll back Zed here, and they're like, oh, sorry, I didn't think to use you in this situation. Like, yeah, like I don't know. I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't want to put you in danger, person I love. Like, so yeah, but it is not like, yeah, she volunteers and sort of justifies it as like, fuck Charles for making the hungry choir. Like, I want to stop those people. So yeah, and yeah, like Bree feels like another person. Like she comments on not having Derosha around. Bree feels like someone who cut to 20 years in the future is like seen as another Derosha. Like the shit that she's eating. It feels like she's going to be a top tier power eater by 20 years future in the story.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if she keeps eating powerful things, yeah.
Like that's a hell of a pattern to have. Like the person who eats really powerful shit.
Yeah. I mean, there was I think a Reddit comment on or not a Reddit comment, a comment on the actual chapter page about Bree maybe eating Marcy, and I thought that would be fucking hilarious.
I think we pulled out a pale predictor like that a while ago, actually.
Did we? Good stuff.
Maybe. I also just wanted to call it. There's this funny where they're like talking about, would this be okay for Brie? She mentions, I ate an 11-year-old girl alive. That was pretty uncomfortable. Which I love as an out of context quote.
Yeah, it is a good one.
Yeah, actually, and so something I did want to bring up as well. So Brie jumped out to me as a great counter example to what's going on in Kennet right now too, because she's got this Hallow inside her, and she's sort of doing heartlessy practices. Like there's words thrown around like harbinger and stuff, and like she's not heartlessing in the same way Matthew does, but it seems like it's essentially the same kind of thing. And it just stood out as a contrast to everything going on with like Kira Lynn and co right now. Like I think I talked a lot last week about how I'm thinking that this is all part of Charles's endgame to erode the categories by everyone being a little bit heartless and being willing to treat themselves like a summon and trade their parts. And Kira Lynn and co are doing it in the worst possible way. They're sticking the abyss in themselves and making themselves literally heartless. Whereas like, yeah, and once again, Bree's over here just sort of being like, this is the cool way you can use this power. Like something bad happened to me. Now I've got this Hallow and I'm going to use it to eat bad shit out of the world.
Yeah.
So I just like her. Again, it's sort of like that little moment last chapter where we got a reminder of when the seal can be good. And here it's like we are getting a reminder that like heartless practices can be a good thing. Like don't let Kira Lynn fool you. Like Bree's giving us an example of how this can be nice.
Yeah, it's awesome. Bree's spectacular.
Another comparison I wanted to pull out, and this was from Borange Hat on our Discord, who brought up that Bree is a great foil to Edith as well, because both are vessels that fell in love with the knight that saved them, but Edith selfishly is held on to Matthew out of like a toxic fear of him leaving, whereas Bree is sort of selfishly trying to eat up shit that threatens them.
Yeah, that's good. That's very
good. One of those great connections where I'm like, God, we should have made that arcs go. That's perfect.
Yeah, it's a very good
one. Shout out to Borange Hat for that.
Yeah, top stuff, Borange. But yeah, so the trio put this plan into action. They summon the Tenant and start to work on getting him chomped.
Doesn't go according to plan at first.
No, he's even with them being so prepped for him, he's just so strong. He's like summoning walls, others, people. He's like fully out of control.
Yeah, it's a great action scene.
Yeah. I kind of, again, like we get the setup earlier in the chapter of just how powerful he is, and we really see that. Like even when they're ready for him, they're not ready enough for him.
Yeah. It is funny because like technomancy as a realms practice was something that didn't make sense to me when the story started. But it's these little things like this fight did remind me of fighting Father Gobar towards the end when he just kept like, I think they were in that fucking
in like an office building.
Yeah. Like it did remind me of that a bit, but it was obviously quite different. But like technomancy really does take over spaces. And it's like those little things where the more we see it in practice, the more I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see why this is a realms realm sort of thing.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, I did want to call out. There's mention of like how as technomancy got bigger, more and more places started to have technomancers kind of on call to the council as consultants, or some people would try and pick up a bit of technomancy so that they could like inform the council. And like obviously, again, that just tracks to how technology has been treated by politics. But there's a specific mention that like Toronto used to have someone like that. For some reason, I really latched onto that example. And I was thinking, I wonder what sort of other like how do you decide you're the person who's going to try and pick up technomancy? Like I'm just imagining some like because Thunder Bay didn't have that, and it's like Deb probably would be the closest thing Thunder Bay would have to somebody who could look at technomancy, and that's funny to me. Like, how do you decide who the person is that does this?
Yeah, good point. I don't know. Whoever draws the short straw, I guess.
And like Toronto's was very funny. It just reminded me again that Toronto's just seemingly like because we know nothing about it. Toronto's this great like thing that the story's doing. We're reminding us that it's not all about Kennet. Like we never know what's going on with Toronto.
Yeah.
And there's like a whole story there that we're not seeing. So somebody was doing technomancy and now has presumably either been killed or been run off.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? Will we ever find out anything more about what's going on in Toronto?
I kind of like it as the place that is the fight is bigger than us. Although it kind of isn't anymore now that they're like murking Alabasters and Orams. Maybe it will start to become more relevant. And like we went to Ottawa, which is the other Toronto.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, actually, yeah. Should we talk about the Orm a bit more? Is that
Yeah. Oh, because yeah, this is during it's sort of like around this fight where they're talking about their plan to deal with the Aurum. And I thought it was interesting because yeah, they talk about how the thing with Aurums is that they need to keep up, and we used to talk about this back in like Arc 10, like the idea that when your jurisdiction is like society and society changes, it makes sense that it's the one with the high turnover because you got to keep on top of it, and if you can't, you get replaced. And I'm not sure exactly what their plan is to do that with Ryan. Like they talk about anchoring him, but it's like he was already a bit of a tech head in the 90s when he took the role. Like I don't know that he's that far behind. They're talking about the market and maybe the market will be new enough that he can't do good on it, but like I don't have my head around what their angle is yet, which is quite fun. Like it's like the Alabaster. I didn't fully understand exactly what the plan was till it got revealed. And it feels like Wildbow's managed to do that again with the Aurum, where I'm like, we're getting these big picture points, but I'm not seeing how to connect the dots exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I kind of got the same vibe of like, I suspect the Aurum might not support Charles, especially because we find out they don't really have a good plan to take him down. I don't know.
And it was the end of 19.Z where he had that moment, like in the Aurum's interlude, where Ryan was a bit like, he saw the Kenneteers and he was like, yes, my personal question has been answered. And that's been hanging over us for a while. So, yeah, the Kenneteers very explicitly talk about how they're going to go into this now, like, but we can't assume that we'll be able to talk him out of being on Charles's side. Whereas I feel like us as readers are primed to be like, pretty good odds you can, though. Like, 19.Z certainly left us with the impression that that's a decent option. But that, I don't know, like again, this is feeling like it's too easy. Like part of me is like, I don't think that I should just expect Wildbow to be kind enough to us that the Kenneteers will rock up with a half-cocked plan and Ryan will be like, nah, no worries, I'm on your team now.
Yeah, that would be pretty nice. I can't imagine things going that well for the Kenneteers though.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that just feels too easy. So I don't know. Yeah, that's the other, I guess that's the other half is like, I don't know exactly what angle they're trying to take with Ryan. And even though, despite him only having an interlude an arc and a half ago, I'm not exactly sure where Ryan's going to be sitting. So, this is almost why it's fun. And like, we see they've got these scraps of a plan here, and those already have kind of fallen apart by the end of the chapter. So they're intentionally going to go in half cocked. So there's a lot of fun stuff to play with here.
Yeah. So yeah, to jump back to the Tenant fight, Gillimae comes in with a save, and the Tenant gets vored, and everyone's happy.
Yeah, good times. You can always celebrate a good voring.
Yeah. So can we talk about how Gillimae just kind of snaps his fingers and that's it? Like, are the Tenant's creations like glamour or illusions, or is Guilherme just like crazy strong now that he's winter? Like I know Guilherme was always kind of pretty strong, but this feels like a pretty baller move by Guilherme, like surprisingly so.
Yeah, I want to say it's like, I know this is the meme answer because it's the other verse, but it's sort of both, right? Because it's like he's, as you said, like they were meant to be illusions or whatever, and even though it's not glamour, it's probably like close enough that Guilherme can be like, well, I'm a fucking ancient master of illusions, so I trump this like newfangled, not quite established technomancy master of illusions. So
Mm,
I think that's what's going on. Is it's just like ancient master of the same thing can trump even this powerful tenant on it, and
mm,
it wasn't a clean victory for Guilherme either. Like he gets fucking eviscerated by glass shards, which Lucy calls out. If they hadn't been able to beat him pretty quick after that, Guilherme might have started to be in trouble.
mm.
It's just Guilherme gives you the vibe that he knew they'd win if he did that.
Yeah.
Which I mean, yeah. Could we talk about Guilherme actually? Like he has very stern words with Lucy at the end here, which did remind me of when the dead Alabaster was like, he doesn't care for you as much as you think. And I don't know.
Is that true?
Yeah, and I think it is. I think
Mm,
Guilherme is just he's old with a capital O as well. I think, and it's just like I don't know that he's capable of the sort of caring that we'd
mm,
want from him. But it's just it feels like something's coming with Guilherme. Like he's so tied into like we called him out in the Alabaster conflict as like he was a great counterexample to the Alabaster in a lot of ways, and like he's tied into so much of what the Kenneteers are doing. I'm not surprised he is the one Kennet other we still get to see.
mm,
But also, I don't. It feels like Wildbow's setting up to do something with Guilherme that maybe is more than just chatting to the Winter Court with him. And I don't know what it feels like. There's so many pieces to pick from, and I don't know. Again, I don't know which dots to connect. But there's something. Guilherme's being set up for something. It's no accident he's the one dude who's hanging out with them, and I don't know what it is.
mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
It's interesting. What? Yeah. What's going on with Guilherme is a great
yeah,
question. Why is
yeah.
he here narratively? I've got a prediction for this that I pulled out from
Okay.
our pale predictions. So let's
Let's
come
let's
back to it.
yeah. Let's relitigate it there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the tenant's been chewed up and not yet spat out, and the Kenneteers all call home and find out shit is pretty rough. Kennet has been overtaken. The others are in hiding or on the run. It's not just so good.
Hmm. Yeah, we learn the one shout out we get is that Chloe and Nibble have fucked off.
Mm,
Which is devastating.
yeah.
I think it's so funny that like to me, Chloe and Nibble leaving was so indicative of like the Kennet that they were trying to build being gone, like at least
Mm,
temporarily. But
mm,
like it's such a blow to everything Kennet stands for that Chloe and Nibble of all people had to leave.
yeah.
Um, and that's funny to me because I remember almost saying the opposite when they first showed up, like learning about the ghouls and thinking, oh, if anyone's going to be on Team Conspirators and want Kennet to be bloody and gross, it would be the ghouls. And then we actually met Chloe and Nibble and learned that they were far better than that. And so now it's like they first arrived and I was like, oh, it's not a good sign that ghouls are showing up. And now they're leaving. And I'm like, God, it's devastating that the ghouls are leaving.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. You're right. I mean, we have come a long way, but also the fact that Nibble and Chloe are, in exile is not a great moment, is it?
No, no. Yeah. They're the heart and soul of Kennet.
Yeah. Um, yeah, we get a pretty heartbreaking call with Lucy and Jasmine. Jasmine being like, "Oh, I notice you're not telling me that you're going to be safe," and Lucy's like, "Haha, see ya."
Yeah, the goodbye is I
It's
love you
rough.
so much, and it scares me that you're not telling me you'll be safe. And Lucy says, I love you too, and then like hangs up. And it's like
Yeah,
just doesn't address it at all.
terrifying,
Yeah.
terrifying stuff.
I also really wanted to call out the line where Jasmine says, like grandfather and the other dogs were wondering why you haven't called them. And Lucy's like, well, I didn't want to without permission, like taking them this far away.
Mm,
And Jasmine's like, you have their permission,
yeah,
like please use it.
obviously you have their permission.
Yeah, it's like Lucy's the equivalent. You know that like YouTube video about like whether when guys can notice when a girl is flirting with them, and it's like, oh, maybe she's just being nice. Like Lucy's the friendship equivalent of that. It's like you dingus. They gave you the John slash Yolda jacket. Like, of course they want you to call like Lucy's such a fucking dumbass sometimes.
Yeah. Good times. Good times. Yeah, earlier in the chapter, I guess we're calling out as we were talking about the Aurum earlier. The Kenneteers were talking about using the market to maybe count for something in the Aurum challenge. Nope.
No.
Yeah, sounds like the. I really don't know. It's so hard for me to picture what is the Aurum challenge. What theoretically could it even be?
Yeah. It feels like it's been a little bit spelt out, but not really. Like what was on this thing where he gave us a bunch of info, and I'm like, okay, but I don't see how these pieces fit together.
Mm,
And I think that's by design. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like it is. The chapter ends on this vibe of like, okay, well, we either need to do it well or we need to do it fast, and we need to do it fast. And I find myself hoping that the story follows. So it'd be so great if 21.9 opened with just the the Aurum trial just starting. I think it'd be really fun to throw us in the deep end for it too, but we'll see. I
mm,
mean, as you said, whatever scraps of a plan they did have are fully in tatters when we learned that the market's already fucked.
yeah.
So unless they take the angle that the loss of the market is a failure of the Aurum, but I don't know. It didn't really seem like they were going for the angle of calling him out for his failures like they did with the Alabaster. They wanted to very
No.
specifically just find someone better, like hamstring him so he can't adapt, and then find somebody who can.
Yeah.
And that's also the other interesting thing. They don't have a candidate in mind. Like,
Yeah. They have to. They're putting out a casting call basically for it.
yeah, which I wonder. Like, do you think are there any names that jump to your mind, like from characters we've met or know?
Toady is one that
Yeah.
I see a lot.
Toady was my first thought too, but I wouldn't wish that on poor
No, for
Toady.
sure.
And what about Bubble Yum? Like that would be
Yeah, pretty rough.
hectic for their relationship. It
Yeah,
would be great to have a goblin as your Aurum though. Like
it
there's
would be
something great.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah,
don't know. Yeah.
biscuit.
I can support Biscuit, yeah. Every innocent is now a Barney.
Yeah.
That's the first rule.
But yeah, so Kenneth's in trouble. The Kenneteers decide they can't afford to play it slow here. They have to act fast against the Aurum, despite that this is like sticks and bubblegum vibes for their plan. They're
Not
gonna try
even
and make a
sorry,
move.
Sticks and Bubblegum was a level above this. This is
Yeah,
just
true.
Sticks. They haven't found the Bubblegum yet.
Yeah.
And also they lost half the sticks in their phone call.
Yeah. Yeah. They really don't have a plan. So yeah, that'll be a fun one next
Yeah,
chapter
like
when they try
yeah,
and figure out what to do.
yeah, these calls were basically like, okay, so we can't really use the market as an angle like we wanted, and also we do have to do it faster than we were thinking. So it's like, yeah,
Mm,
losing your main ace up your sleeve, and also deciding you need to accelerate your timeline. That's a hell of a thing going in.
yeah. Pretty rough. But yeah, so that's the end of our chapters for this week.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, like it felt to me like both of these chapters were really dealing with the fallout from the Alabaster, or at least the first chapter
Yeah, yeah.
and a half were the fallout of the Alabaster getting popped. And then maybe like a half a chapter setting up, getting ready to do it to the Aurum. But yeah, I like. I wanted to like just as we sign off, like focus on like that idea that like as like the ladies talked about when they took our arc 20 reflecting episode from us, like arc 20 focused a lot on exactly nailing down what the differences between Kennet and Team Charles are and why they can't work together at the moment.
Mm,
And like it was so important that then this arc opened with deciding to kill the Alabaster, because that was Kennet kind of crossing a line they hadn't crossed and moving them closer to Charles, but the way they did it is really what separates them from Team Charles. And I
mm,
just think it's so funny that these two chapters are really showing us the effects on that and how it's getting noticed. Like the fact that they did it better is seemingly getting them some more attention in some ways than Charles's has. And that feels important.
mm. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. They've made some big plays. They've struck a decisive blow, but it also feels like that. Who knows what the fuck they can even do next? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, as Charles said, they have him in check, but it's not checkmate. And like the other thing, in the past, the Kenneteers have been caught off guard because they weren't thinking enough about what Charles is up to, and
mm.
that's something we haven't talked about in this episode. But like, we don't know what Charles's next play is going to be.
Well, the play that we found out that was the big play was the the Marcy's army.
Yeah, and he is disassembling the market and stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it feels like he's gonna
Yeah.
he's got to be prepping something very specifically to throw at the Kenneteers when they emerge to do their next challenge.
Mm,
Like, there's no way he talked about holding Kennet hostage, and I feel like there's going to be something that was like, the second they emerge to do something to the Aurum, we're going to find out that fucking Jasmine's hanging from a bridge, and on the other side is a school bus of children, sort of thing.
mm, yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, should we get into some predictions?
Yeah. So these were left in our Pale Predictor sheet, which you can
Yep.
find a link to in the show notes.
Yeah. I'll bring mine out first because we hinted at it before, which was Guillerme is going to replace the Sable, which is a pretty big prediction. I really like this one because, as we were mentioning before, like it feels like Guillerme is hanging around for some reason, and I don't
Yeah.
know what that reason is, but becoming one of the judges, the Sable, think feeling like the most likely candidate.
Yeah. Shout out to Omar for making this prediction
Oh,
too.
sorry. Yes, Omar.
I yeah, so the Sable is the judge. Like, just to talk about the guy Gilmay would be replacing in this prediction.
Mm,
I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop on the Sable because I feel like I have a model of the Sable in my head, but it's incredibly simplistic because he's the one we just haven't seen. And like I guess to speak metatextually, it's like there's no way that the judge whose jurisdiction is the Pale, and is the one that we haven't seen anything like an interlude from. There's no way that he is just the boring guy that I have in my head. I would
mm,
expect so. Yeah, like the thing with the Sable for me is he just feels like I'm just waiting for some reveal where it'll all click and they'll be like, oh, this is what the Sable is and who he is and why he is.
mm,
And yeah, like it's hard to talk about replacing him yet without that shoe having dropped yet. But I love the angle of Guillerme as a Sable because if we talk about the Pale or Death as more about like the tarot style change than like endings, Guillerme has obviously entered his final form.
mm,
Like he the Sable has been described as like the spirit, like the soul guide to the soul guide, like chthonic death to chthonic deaths
mm,
or whatever. And I can see Guillerme fitting a similar role as like the mentor who helps people grow and has, entered his frozen form of his own.
yeah, I mean, like, Death, the tarot card, as a metaphor for change, Guillerme as a mentor, maybe helping make people make fundamental changes. There's some, like,
Yeah.
stuff there.
Yeah. Yeah. Both the Sable and Guillerme, like yeah, there's just so many question marks around them in my head, right? I don't feel like I'm keeping up with what
Yeah.
seeds are being sown there at all. And I'm just gonna have to wait for the reveal so Walbo can tell me because I'm not gonna predict it.
Speaking of predicting things, though, Elliot, what predictions did
Yeah.
you pull out?
So I've got one from Arctic Art, who is predicting that Thea will be instrumental in bringing down the Beorgmann. The first thing they sort of noted is how she still sees herself as a child in a lot of realms, and so that might start to fuck with some of his shit. And like exploit any vulnerabilities. And obviously, as a realms specialist, she will be able to navigate all the shifty shit he does, which we didn't call out, but obviously he can rearrange his realm
Mm,
mostly very easily, and
yeah.
Theo should be able to counteract that pretty easily.
Mm,
And just the like Artikar called out, there's some funny parallels between the Beorgman and Thea as people who kidnap children and steal bits of their souls. So it would be a great ultimate restitution for Thea to take down the person who's doing what she did, but even worse.
mm. Yeah, it's a good prediction. I think we've seen a prediction of Thea. Thea is like a counter to a couple of people in the story just by
Yeah.
virtue of who she is, and I think it's great. Like, I would love more Thea time.
Yeah, like Thea is a character who I think a lot of us very quickly grew very attached to, even though she was the baddie in the bit she was in Arc 16.
Mm,
Um, and I've been sad to see her move more and more into the background. This is the curse of the Otherverse. We talked about this a few weeks ago. Walbo creates too many interesting characters and stuff that they can't all stay in the foreground. Like,
yeah.
one day we'll get the deets on a Shumare, hopefully, but
I doubt.
like yeah, like I
Yeah.
like I Thea might appear in the story again or whatever, but like it's a shame she couldn't get a bigger role than she did because I did love her, but Like
That's the case for every single character, though.
exactly.
Yeah,
There's probably 50 other characters I could say the same thing for.
yeah. Which
Like you
is
just at
sad.
a certain point we've got to accept that there are going to be losses.
Yeah. Oh, oh well. But yeah, I do like it. I like if we do see more Thea. I think Thea, yes, could be very instrumental to the Beorgmann, but you know, there's not
This
time for all the things we want.
this feels like a good epilogue sort of level
Yeah,
prediction for me.
great.
Like learning in the epilogue that this is something Thea was doing to make up for shit she did as she goes through her own journey to be a better person would track to me.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, good predictions, everyone. Thank you for leaving those in the form. If you want to leave a prediction and have it potentially be featured on the show, you can do that by following the link that is in our show notes for that.
Yeah, but now it's time to get to our discussion question from last week, which was Halloween themed because it was Halloween last week. And so we're looking for which type of candy would the Kennet others give out and why?
Yeah. Um, a very fun discussion question. I loved a lot of these. Let's start with this one from Ghostly Bird, who said that Gillimer would set up. Well, a few of these discussion questions had things that I didn't quite know exactly what they were, but Ghostly Bird says Gillimer would set up a maple syrup snow candy stall, which I kind of assumed was like a shaved ice or a snow cone, but
I
seems a bit
assumed
more
the same
involved.
thing. Yeah, I made
Um,
the same assumption. Yeah.
But anyway, just like this store where kids make their own maple syrup snow candies and all remember it forever and will never be able to make it again. And right around the corner is Toadie's yellow flavored snow candy stall, which I thought was great.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love those two. I wanted to give a quick shout out before I forget because it's not in our doc, but on our Discord, and we don't usually accept Discord answers, but Megafire did post a funny picture of somebody offering one gun to every kid who was trick or treating. And I also wanted to shout out Malia for pointing out that that meant Lucy is not eligible for a gun in that case, or no, she is because she's a kid.
Right, yeah, burn on Lucy. But yeah, so this is
Yeah,
what the dogs is candy.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, nice. Oh yeah, Beleg Tyler's posted in Discord a picture of
Tear.
Tear, which is candy made from maple syrup on snow. So
So it
Canadian.
is, yeah, it is kind of shaped. Yeah, this is one of those. I don't know if I've talked about this on these podcasts. I probably have because it's like one of my three Canada stories.
Mm.
But like I stayed with a billet family for a week in Vancouver when I was like 16. So like a Canadian family was housing me. And there was something, because 16-year-old me was a little dick, and I made some joke about maple syrup, and the family was like, "Oh, there's more to Canadians than stereotypes or whatever," and like, I shut up or whatever, but they didn't like that I was stereotyping Canadians. But then we were there for Canadian Thanksgiving.
Mm.
That was like the week I was there, and they gave us like turkey that was like in maple syrup as the meal.
Mm.
And that was always my thing where I was like, well, you can't tell me not to stereotype you with maple syrup and then for Thanksgiving give me a fucking maple syrup turkey, can you? Like that.
Yeah, the fact that Canadian candy is just them putting maple syrup on some
Yeah.
snow and then eating it. It's just like it's ridiculous.
And like, I'm not coming from a place of thinking we're any better down here in
No, of
Australia.
course.
I just found out you can buy baked beans mixed with Vegemite in our stores.
You
So like
can?
we're doing horrors
That's
of our own
fun.
down here. Like, and realistically, maple syrup is a much better signature food than Vegemite. Like,
Whoa. That cheesy mite stuff you can get at Woolies that's like
oh,
Vegemite mixed with
yeah,
cream cheese or something. It's delicious. Fucking
I love Vegemite. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm glad ours is Vegemite, but I'm just saying, like, to the average observer, I think you're going to pick maple syrup over Vegemite.
yeah, sure, I guess so.
Yeah, the baked beans with Vegemite was it looked feral. Even
Yeah,
I
that
like
sounds wild.
as somebody who tries all the stupid Vegemite shit that they do in their team ops.
What
This is
was
the one that I
there?
think is too far.
There was like a Vegemite dairy milk or Vegemite Tim Tams or
Yeah,
something.
no, it was Vegemite Cadbury blocks.
Yeah. Good
They
times.
weren't
They were
terrible.
all right. Yeah, I kind of liked them.
It was similar to salted caramel as a
Yeah,
flavor.
a bit of a clash, but
Yeah, it made me feel sick, but I also ate the entire block in one sitting, so that could just be on me.
yeah. That's your fault. I think you can't
Yeah.
blame the chocolate for that. Anyway, speaking of candy, I also liked Shinvi's answers. So Toadie's candy that Toadie would give out are those like those like fruit gummies that have like juice inside them, but some of them are pretty rancid, which I thought was pretty good. Turtle Queen gives out a bag of like gummy flavored animals, but when you open the bag, you're like, oh, there's just green and yellow aquatic animals. Where are all the other colors and flavors? Which I thought was funny. And Miss would give out featureless black mints.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
I liked this answer that we got from Chloe.
Oh, that's
No,
probably
sorry,
a
from
typo.
Sengachi.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
no. Yeah, sorry. I did double take. I was like, I didn't notice that. Yeah, so okay, from Sengachi, who just pointed out that Chloe would probably give out just full size like chocolate bars because she's just so excited to be
Yeah,
involved.
3 full-size bars to each kid. It's just because she's so excited to be able to be out and about and get compliments on her costume and stuff.
Yeah, I love that
Um,
answer.
yeah, Ripper1337 gave a bunch of answers for basically every single different character. Well, not everyone, like 7 or 8 characters. I really liked goblins giving out expired or recalled candies, any
Yeah,
kind of candies that would give you a rough time. And I have this story. I'm picturing. Do you know zombie chews, Elliot?
yeah. They're similar to warheads, aren't they? Like they're really sour.
Yeah, yeah. But there's like a kind of strap version of like a zombie chews that are like a flat
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
And I remember I was at like a after school or like a holiday tennis camp with some family friends once, and one of them ate about like 8 of these zombie chews, 8 or 9 of them, and by the end of it, their tongue was bleeding from all the like sourness that had um, yeah. So that was a good fun time,
Big
and that's the
goblin
exact
energy.
kind of thing that I could, yeah, exactly, that goblins would give out.
Oh,
Squire,
sorry.
mm,
Just to get in on the fun story, I think I might have talked about this in Deep Impact one time, but on my 18th birthday, I ate a packet of M&Ms that had a best before of the day before I was born.
oh
So
shit,
they were expired by 18 years and one day.
nice.
They weren't great, if I'm being honest.
Was this like
Uh,
your parents got them and kept them for your 18th birthday vibe?
no. The school gave them to me.
Sorry, your school gave you 18 years expired food.
Yeah, it was from, so we used to get expired military ration packs to eat on cadets.
Right,
Um
right.
and yeah, the ones so it was just coincidence because it was like a week before my birthday. I opened the ration pack and noticed that they expired the day before I was born, so I kept them for a week to eat them on my birthday.
Mm,
And yeah, honestly they weren't, like, considering they weren't bad. Like it still tasted like chocolate,
sure.
but it wasn't
I
good.
mean, that's a low bar to clear for an
Yeah.
M&M. Um, but yeah, Ripper1337 also called out Squirrel and Pagian giving out glossettes, which are like little chocolate covered, fruit and nut stuff. But they might
Oh,
just
okay.
be. There's apparently a meme. I was looking up on Urban Dictionary, um, and glossettes is on Urban Dictionary as like a candy that might just be animal droppings, and they like used it in a sentence was like, "Oh man, I think I just stepped in some animal droppings. Oh, were they fruit and nut, or were they fruit or were they nut flavored?" Kind of like
Okay.
a small meme, but
Yeah.
a good one, a good one to use by Ripper1337 here.
Yeah, I see. So yeah, they're just like chocolate covered raisins. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Classic rabbit poop style stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
I liked this other pitch for Chloe by Ripper1337 as well, which was dental floss packets, but she's really sweet about it. Like I can see Chloe being that overly motherly kind, where she's like, "Here, take this thing to help clean your teeth. It's important."
yeah.
I could also see that being. I don't know. I could see Jasmine going either way. I feel like Jasmine would give you like a full Snickers bar and some dental floss.
Yeah. If you want a little bonus discussion question answer, Tommy B has posted it in our discussion thread right now. So this is the kind of stuff you miss out on if you're not in the live chat. It's horrifying. I'm not going to describe it because it's pretty rough.
Whoa! No, sorry. Yeah, I'm just reading this now.
Yeah, it's rough times. It's rough times. But anyway, yeah. Oh, we also had Propaganda Pagoda who talked about Tashlet giving out eye candy which looks like eyes. I love the idea that like different colored pupils would be different flavors of eye hard candies. I thought that was great.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm wondering what eye flavored candy would be like now.
Yeah.
I've never licked an eye, I don't think.
Well, you're missing out, mate. Yeah.
Okay.
So, of course, now it's time for our new discussion question.
Ruben, do you want to tell everyone what that is?
Yep. The discussion question is: will Jen be a good leader for the new Belanger compound? We've heard that Jen is making her new power play for the Belangers. Is that good? Is that bad? What are we thinking?
Yeah. Or yeah, almost like to go even broader. What like because we are just coming up with this live.
How dare you?
Spoilers. Or just like what do you think the new Bellinger structure should look like?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
yeah,
Who should
how,
be in charge of the Belangers? Give us the breakdown of how you want the Belangers to be led.
because it's not just the Bellingers. Remember, they're sort of teaming up with the Wits now.
Yes, and the witch as well.
Yeah. Oh, she's just an honorary Bellinger at this point.
Still counts. But yeah, so you can leave your answers to that discussion question in our discussion thread, which is linked in the show notes down below. You can find on the Parahumans subreddit.
Yes, you can also follow us on Twitter. For now, at least. I mean, who knows where that.
Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget to subscribe to our Patreon because we might need to be paying $8 a month soon, right?
Yep. We'll see. I mean, it's not going to be verified. We're just going to be a piece of shit user that doesn't give Elon his fairly earned $8 to try and offset the billions of dollars. Anyway.
That was just sorry. We haven't had a chance because I've been away all week, and so have you. We haven't had a chance to just talk about this anywhere else. But that was so funny how he got haggled down from $20 on accident. Did you see that one?
Yeah. He was like,
Like,
"What about $8?" And now it's become $8. Like he didn't try and pitch $20
yeah.
first.
Oh,
Fucking
the whole thing.
ridiculous.
Yeah, haggle wasn't the right word. Somebody, yeah, Stephen King just said $20 is too much, and then Ewan was like, "What about $8? It's $8." And now he's just been going around acting like it was always $8.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Hilarious.
I mean, if we leave Twitter, we'll be somewhere else because we'll follow the crowd on that one. We're not going to be innovators on that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was really tempted to start making some jokes about Charles charging $8 to get unforesworn and stuff because it's just such a hot mess. Like Elon's really doing the work to prove that money doesn't equal happiness at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Twitter has been a social media that I've used a lot for a while, so I am kind of sad. And like, it does, there are some things that Twitter is actually really, really good at, so it is kind of sad in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. But also, there's nothing so funny and weirdly unifying for humanity as laughing at Elon just completely fucking himself over.
Just losing his mind.
Yeah, losing his mind and money. Like he had to loan against Tesla stock to take out the loans on to buy Twitter, and it's already gone down a huge amount of value. Plus the fact that the like interest Twitter can't even it's not even profitable and can't even cover its own interest payments. Like it's so fucked.
Yeah, but Ruben, everyone's going to want to pay him $8 a month to have to get priority. I mean, this is it's so funny to me that he's like, this is to save free speech. Is I'm going to make it so you can pay to have your voice heard because that's free speech. It's like, yeah, good, yeah.
Very funny. Anyway, so yeah, come join us on Twitter before it's too late at Pale Reflect Cast. If you want to find out more details about the Duff Media Network, you can also head to duffmedia.com. There's all kinds of great stuff on there.
Yeah. And yeah, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/Tooth Media. Subscribe to it for at least $8 a month, or we're not going to read your discussion question answers anymore.
Yeah. So you
So
better do
take
it.
that.
Yeah. And while you're on Patreon, of course, make sure you head over to Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow. The best way to become a challenger for the Aurum contest is to make sure you're giving Wildbow his monthly income on Patreon. So do that there.
That's the angle of attack. Maybe the Aurum is behind on like Patreon and subscription based services.
Yeah. And the Kenneteers will start soliciting $8 a month from all the markets. Use that to challenge them.
They've essentially got like the Kennet practitioners are essentially a Patreon fund that all the Kennet others are paying into. If you really squint at it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. You figure out the rest of the joke yourself, everyone. But I made that part.
Yep. Well done. Anyway, yeah, thanks for joining us, folks, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.